Boko Haram terrorists killed over 30 soldiers in Nigeria's northern state of Borno. Military officials say the terrorists stormed a base near the border with Niger on their trucks. They briefly seized the base after a heavy combat in which Nigerian soldiers were killed. Boko Haram terrorists have been launching deadly attacks against Nigerian security forces and civilians over the past several years. Now, the group wants to impose its radical ideology on the African country. It is notorious for kidnapping, killing, and abusing civilians, mainly in Nigeria's northeast. Crossing over to London, joined by Sayed Mohsen Abbas, journalist and commentator. Thank you so much for being with us. Well, we've seen now more and more clashes in dealing with Boko Haram and Nigerian soldiers. Tell me the situation overall. I mean, on the one hand, it seems like Boko Haram has been attacking more and more, but also we're seeing some action by the Nigerian military. How do you assess the situation there in Nigeria?
Well, what's interesting is that there's this consistency in the way that these Al-Qaeda, ISIS-type organizations, which is exactly what Boko Haram are, they are a terrorist outfit. It's interesting that the parallels you can draw in the way that they seem to sustain their presence, be able to hit and run, create chaos, conflict, but they're never fully eradicated. They always seem to have this lingering presence. And one has to ask that question. Ultimately, in order to maintain that kind of lingering presence, they have to have a supply line of funds, support, training, communications networks. And it's quite fascinating to me how Boko Haram have managed to maintain that chaos in that region, even though most of the territories which they initially took up, 28 provinces or 28 local areas rather within some provinces, were overrun by them totally. Those have been taken back by the government, but somehow the government doesn't seem to be able to apply the finishing touch. In fact, the reality is that over 9 years that this insurrection has taken place, 20,000 people have died and 2 million people have been displaced, and it doesn't just affect Nigeria. They're out affecting Benin, Cameroon, Chad, the entire area, really.
Well, when we look at the situation, I mean, what is key? It's very interesting, whether we're talking about groups like Boko Haram or Daesh, that we saw suddenly appear. And now, for example, in Nigeria, it appears as the military, it's hard for them to get control of it. What is key here? Is it actually more as far as the Nigerian government itself getting a hand on this situation and taking care of it, or does it require some type of international involvement?
I think an international involvement, including not just France, Britain, and the US, which are the prime supporters of the Nigerian government. They've supplied arms and support up to an extent. I mean, they've only given so much support as to be able to, if you like, keep them at bay without actually finishing them off. An example is, for instance, how the US military hasn't provided the Cobra helicopters that the Nigerian government requested, which would assist the mopping up operations, I would assume, but they haven't supported them. They've also not acknowledged that Boko Haram have officially allied themselves to ISIS and have pledged allegiance effectively, although they're split into two camps themselves. Nonetheless, they are affiliated.
Well, why do you think that that's the case then? Why do you think that's the case, that the United States hasn't delivered on its promises, whether it's the helicopters or even acknowledging what seems to be obvious to most people as far as the alliance between Boko Haram and other terrorist groups?
I think it's because it benefits the US. Ultimately, let's not forget, Nigeria is an oil-rich nation. They have plenty of resources, gold, other things, resources as well. So the Western powers are in there. They have a relationship with Buhari. And let's look at Buhari, the president, and his actions towards Sheikh Zakzaki, which is a genuine Islamic resistance movement. Let's look at that parallel. The way that they're suppressing and destroying that movement is not quite the same as Boko Haram. And let's evaluate this. Who gains from all this conflict? The bottom line is, by having Boko Haram, you can discredit original Islam, the kind of thing that Sheikh Zakzaki would want to introduce in Nigeria. You're in with a bloodthirsty, violent version. You would also give the corrupt governments an opportunity to, if you like, squander resources, get those resources out by distracting the public, their Nigerian public, towards the fear. It would also give support to the likes of Buhari, who is basically a totalitarian dictator, actually. It would also, in the eyes of the public, it would draw them to look to him to be their champion of support. So, you know, this really is benefiting both the corrupt government of Nigeria and the Americans in lots of ways. And let's also not forget that it also means that they can sell more arms. They can make money out of arms, out of the oil, and they can maintain Buhari, who is their corrupt man on the ground in Nigeria.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us. Said Mohsen Abbas, a journalist and commentator out of London.